Hello everyone. In this video, we'll go over Cinema Tools LUTs, the workflow when working with LUTs, and general tips for color grading. We created Cinema Tools to give the best starting point when working in log format. What makes our LUTs different from the competition is we extensively test and profile each camera during development. Many LUTs on the market are made for popular cameras, like the Sony FX3, and then simply converted to other cameras using color space transforms. This approach overlooks important sensor differences, which can lead to inaccurate results. Our packs have 4 distinct versions of LUTs to cover most scenarios. The base is a technical transform LUT, similar to what you get with a manufacturer's LUT or a CST, but with a smooth tonal curve. Enhance A alters the color of skin tones, greens, and blues. It's inspired by Aries Alexa color science. Enhance B has a slight push toward blue in the lower midtone region and adds color separation with the skin tones and a background. Enhance C is film emulation LUT with deep shadows and warm white point. It works best with film grain overlays and other film effects. The problem with a lot of LUTs on the market, besides not being fully compatible with your sensor, is they can also degrade the image quality. The best way to test the LUT is by applying it to a color chart image. When using high-quality LUT, there should be no banding and the gradient should remain smooth. Here's an example of one of the popular film emulation plugins applied to the test charts. Even without adding any other adjustments, we can see the issue with colors. Because of lots of variables, it might not be visible when applied to a clip. That's why this method works great for testing LUTs. You can apply the same workflow when working with manufacturer-provided LUTs. For example, here's the first version of Nikon's nlog LUT. Notice the problems in the grayscale gradient. Version 2 is an improvement, but it tends to clip highlights and crush the shadows. While this is an extreme case and most manufacturer LUTs usually perform fine, it's still a useful test. For comparison, here's Cinema Tools' Nikon-based LUT. And here's the Enhance A version. The gradients and transitions remain smooth. When it comes to color grading, I keep my project settings YRGB unless I'm working in HDR. If I need to use other color spaces, I do my color management in the color page. One of the benefits of Davinci Resolve is that it operates in 32-bit float when using their native color tools. This means I can push a clip up by 6 stops in one node and bring it back down in the next, and it'll still look clean and unchanged. The same idea applies to color gamut. The adjustments are non-destructive. Having said that, there's a proper way of grading when using LUTs. The LUTs and CSTs can and will clip your signal when pushed too far. Here's the same +6 stop correction applied before the CST, and as we can see, the information is clipped and cannot be restored. So to avoid crushed shadows or blown out highlights, you need to adjust the exposure before the LUT if it's pushed out of the luma range. The proper workflow when using LUTs looks like this. Exposure and white balance adjustments should come before the LUT. This ensures your corrections appear smooth and natural, and you won't find yourself fighting the footage. Masking, secondaries, and keys should be done after the LUT, since it's much easier to pull clean keys when the image is in the correct range. Also, depending on your clip's exposure, you might not get true black and white points. For example, if you try to adjust lift before the LUT, it will crush the shadows due to the LUT's roll-off. To get accurate blacks or whites, those final adjustments should be made after the LUT. Even when working in YRGB, you can set the HDR wheels to match your camera native color space and make exposure adjustments in exact stops. To do this, click the offset wheel and select the correct gamma and color space. This allows you to adjust exposure just like you would in camera, with precise and predictable results. This technique is also very effective for white balance adjustments or when pushing the image toward a specific color. Using the offset wheel in HDR mode before the LUT results in a more natural and organic look, with smooth roll-off into the highlights and shadows. If you apply the same correction after the LUT, you'll notice it affects the highlights and darker areas with unwanted tint. I keep a folder called Tools, where I store things like keys, HDR node setups, complex presets, and similar assets. It saves time and avoids repetitive clicks when I need to access something quickly. I also regularly use HDR offset nodes, so I've saved my most used gamma and color space combinations as presets. Now I can simply drag and drop them onto a clip instead of setting them up manually every time I start a new project. Another useful trick for setting exposure and matching color is to first convert your images to black and white. Since our eyes are more sensitive to luminescence than color, balancing the exposure without color distractions makes the color matching process much easier. You can do this by adding black and white nodes at the timeline level. You can see that these 4 shots don't match well when I cut between them. When I switch to black and white, the differences become much easier to spot. I added HDR control offset before the CST and minor lift gamma and gain tweaks after. When I disable the black and white node and cut between the shots, they now look much closer together. Thank you for watching, and I hope that this video was helpful. If you have any questions, you can add them in the comments.